Welcome to Fan Perspective. I am your host, Joe Ferraro, and as we do every week with this segment, we leave you, the fans, in charge of what we're going to talk about. Let's head on over to my Twitter, where Craft Brew Jester asks, should Johny Hendricks be forced to change weight class? I don't think he'd cut it at 185 pounds, pun intended. Touche, I get the joke, no problem. Now, do I think he should be forced to go to 185? No, not at all. I think, based on what I've heard and what I've read, Johny Hendricks has a few things that he needs to work with in terms of outside of fight camp. He seems to blow up whenever he's not competing. It's a diet issue, apparently. He's also no longer a young man. He's not in his 20s anymore. He's in his 30s, so cutting that weight is going to become much more difficult as time goes on. By the sounds of it, if he just simply cleans up his diet, gets a little more strict, a little bit more disciplined, he'll be fine. He should be able to compete again at 170 pounds, where he was the champion in the UFC's welterweight division. I really don't want to see him move up and take on those monsters at 185 like Chris Weidman or Luke Rockhold. Can he compete against them? Probably. But why bother? Fight against guys your own size. All right, back to my Twitter, where Louis Lee J wants to know about Jon Jones's return and what's next for Rory MacDonald. But when it comes to Jon Jones, there are some things that still need to be dealt with both inside the octagon with the UFC and the organization, as well as outside with Jon doing all those speaking engagements. I mean, if I had to take a guess as to when he's going to come back, and based on Daniel Cormier being medically suspended until November 11th, I think Jon potentially against DC could take place likely, I would say maybe the Super Bowl show for the UFC, and if it's going to be earlier, perhaps on that New Year's show. Now, for Rory MacDonald, different story altogether. He still needs medical clearance for his nose and his right foot. If that doesn't happen, he can't compete until January 11th. That is in and around the same time that Hector Lombard, a guy he was originally supposed to fight with back in the day, is going to be, his suspension is actually expiring as well. Hector Lombard ready to go in January, Rory MacDonald ready to go in January. Once again, could be a New Year's card fight, or it could be a bout that the UFC could consider either on a fight night around that time or on Super Bowl weekend. All right, let's head over to my Facebook, where Rob Roll-Along asks, what does Sage Northcutt's future have in store? Well, first things first, he's only 19 years old. He's got so much ahead of him that it's not even worth discussing what his future does. Now, I understand what you're asking, don't get me wrong, but you think about it for a second. Mixed martial artists generally don't peak probably until their early 20s, mid-20s, and if they do well, they coast until around, 32 years old, early 30s and stuff like that. Sage is only 19. He has so much time to develop. He has to learn a lot about his own game, his style, what it's like to be in front of the media all the time, how to deal with all the haters online, because the poor guy's already getting ripped, and all he did was make his octagon debut. So one thing I do know about Sage Northcutt, and check this out, he's a huge fan of George St. Pierre, not only George's fighting style, but what George brought outside the octagon as an ambassador and as a role model. I'm hearing he wants to do the same thing with his career as it begins to develop. I also know Faraz Zahabi at TriStar does have an open door policy to welcome in fighters that want to take their game to the next level. Sage right now is only trained by his dad. He does some other stuff as well, but he is aware that he needs to move on to a bigger camp with tons of talent that can help him train for fights, and I think TriStar would be a great fit. Same can be said about Jackson Winklejohn and so many other camps out there. But the fact that he likes George St. Pierre as a role model, don't be surprised if there's some sort of synergy or meeting in the minds in that type of situation. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you hit me up on social media, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, or on Instagram. Thank you very much for watching. Ciao for now.